Welcome to the Hud Grad Club. I'm Chris Webb, and I'm the Alumni Engagement Career Consultant with the University of Huddersfield's Careers Employability Service. And, full disclosure, I'm also a University of Huddersfield graduate. So I've generally got pretty positive things to say about both the institution and any of our graduates. But don't take my word for it. In this podcast, we'll be meeting different members of the University of Huddersfield's global alumni community, finding out what makes them tick, about their experiences during their time at the university and their career journeys since completing their studies. Join us as we explore the inspiring, innovative and diverse range of individuals that make up the Hud Grad Club. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Hud Grad Club. And Andy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to it.
Great to have you here with us. So just for kind of any of our viewers who maybe don't know you from their time at Huddersfield or haven't come across you before, can you tell us a little bit about your kind of background, what you studied at the university and what you're doing now?
Yeah, so I studied 2009 to 2012 and graduated at the ripe old age of 36 as a mature student, doing exercise, physical activity and health, which was a fantastic blended course. Had a brilliant time. And my current role is I'm a development manager for the Archer School Sport Partnership, which is a physical education, physical activity and sport network based in Sheffield.
Great stuff. Thanks, Andy. So I know we're going to kind of dig a little bit more into, sort of the work background, how you kind of got to where you are now, a little bit kind of later in the podcast. But we start every sort of episode, as always, with our greatest Hud story ever told section, which sounds very grand, but doesn't necessarily have to be. Looking at your kind of reflections from your time at the university and any kind of particularly sort of good memories that stand out from your time at Huddersfield. So I guess, first of all, first question would be, what sort of brought you to Huddersfield, particularly, as you said, as a mature student?
Well, I was born in Huddersfield, so born, brought up in Huddersfield. So throughout my sort of childhood, throughout my working life, obviously often driving past the university complex, seeing how it's developed over the years with the fantastic buildings. And I had wanted to go back to university. I just didn't feel academic enough, maybe, when I was back at school. So an opportunity presented itself to me to come back and study at the age that I did. And with living in Huddersfield, I felt that was a great choice for me to go there. And at that point, they really had developed amazing facilities. And I think the sort of physical activity and exercise course offer was very good. And it seemed to be that side of things was growing at the university. So that really sort of appealed to me to come back and study at Huddersfield as an opportunity. It was obviously local to me. I think that experience-wise, doing the course with some other mature students was absolutely fantastic. So I felt really lucky, I think, because there was about 4 or 5 of us on the course and we worked together as a group throughout, just bounced off each other. I think obviously we had that little bit more focus being mature students, and it was more of I wouldn't say last chance, but chance for me to retrain and then sort of forge an alternative career. And we just worked really well together on projects. We had quite a bit of life experience that we could share. The lecturers, unbelievable, linked really well with some of them, just very good at sort of communicating what they were trying to teach, giving us that information, knowledge, giving us that confidence to be able to study, which for me was really important because I would say I was from a not particularly academic background when I was younger, and that was one worry that I had when I came, but I actually really enjoyed it. The blend of the course was amazing. Not some research, some assignment based, some exam based, some practical based, and we'll obviously probably talk about the work placement side of it. So it was a perfect blend for me, and it just made it quite relaxing. And I think just talking about stories, when I came, I was a little bit concerned about the fact maybe not being from an academic background, I might struggle a little bit with the course, but ended up, really doing well for myself, found the research really brilliant. And because it was the Jubilee, I managed to get myself an award. So if you got over 80%, they were giving out a Golden Jubilee Award. It's just here behind me on the wall.
Excellent.
I think you can just check out the University of Huddersfield thing at the bottom. And that was for getting over 80%, which were like fantastic. It was really sort of rewarding for me, made me feel really positive. And also the fact that Stu was still the Chancellor, and we got to go in the evening and present it with some people from all different courses. It was like a pretty amazing experience, something that I'll never forget, and obviously stays hanging on the wall to remind me every day.
Yeah, it's fantastic, Andy. And I think, like you say, particularly if we hear from a lot of kind of mature students who've sort of come to university about the fact that, you come with maybe a slightly different sort of approach or a different mindset for it, but also that actually, previous kind of experience of education almost doesn't necessarily matter as much, because, you're approaching it from perhaps kind of a different angle, or using that education for a different purpose. And obviously, allows you to go on and achieve sort of amazing things. So yeah, fantastic story to share. And that sort of leads in really nicely, I guess, to our next section, looking at your career journey, I suppose, and how you sort of got to where you are now, and where kind of the experience at Huddersfield sort of fitted into that, really. So if we can kind of take you back a little bit sort of previously, what was sort of the journey that led you to kind of Huddersfield in the first place, I guess, and why did you take that decision to sort of make that career change? How did that all come about?
Well, the sport, physical activity and exercise route, I've always been an active person, and I've been, from a voluntary perspective, been involved in sort of coaching at football clubs prior to going to university. So it is something that, even from being such a young age, I've always wanted to get into. My work path led me down a slightly different route prior to coming to Huddersfield, which I still enjoyed, but wasn't what I really wanted to do. Because I think the fact of being able to make a difference, I think, which I can touch on a bit later. But yeah, what happened was I got made redundant from my previous role, which sort of gave me the nudge. I've been thinking about it for a few years, about I really would like to go back to study. I'd keep having a look at Huddersfield University and what they offered, that type of course wise, seeing how the facilities are developed, etc. I just got that push, so I got made redundant. I thought I'm going to make this jump now to obviously get a lot more industry knowledge and understanding, and some work-based experience on the back of the fact that I'd done quite a lot of volunteering within sort of community sport, and there was a person who had experiences of different sports. So that helped. And then coming to university sort of gave me that sort of background industry knowledge, gave me that experience to go out into the work, see the industry and see what's out there. And the course really helped me with that, gave me that stepping stone to build that knowledge and experience. And I think the sort of light bulb moment was around doing the work placement.
Yeah.
So I think second year went out for maybe 6 or 8 weeks work placement. So I chose to do it with a network similar to what I'm working for now. And that just opened my eyes to what the industry has to offer and what potential career routes you could take. And I think it also made sense of what I'd been studying prior to that and how it applied to the working environment. So, what you're actually sitting down in the lectures and learning is important and does apply to the real working world. And it's sort of being able to do that. And I think then just providing opportunities for children and young people to be active, to get engaged in sport and physical activity, and seeing the difference it makes, sort of being able to inspire them. And then I think that made me feel like I can make a real difference here to people's lives. Previous job was in construction, good. You take with building like new houses and foundation and things like that, which was okay, enjoyed it. But I feel like this particular career path is making a real difference to people's lives, and helping to inspire children and young people, to be active, get involved in sport and physical activity. And that's something that I have always wanted to do from a young age, and it ended up being the right time for me to come and learn about that and then get those opportunities.
Yeah, and as you say, that focus on lifelong learning is so important for that reason, isn't it? That your kind of things that motivate you, things that value you, or that you value might not change, but obviously the opportunity to actually get involved with that type of stuff may change over time as you get involved in more voluntary opportunities or work opportunities. I mean, you mentioned earlier about kind of, I guess, yeah, transitioning to back to university as a mature student. I mean, we talked quite a lot of our guests on the podcast about that transition from student to graduate, but I guess in your experience, it's kind of student to graduate, back to graduate. So what was that kind of like, getting back into university as sort of a mature student, and then I guess, you know, coming out of that, as you said, at the other end, into sort of a brand new industry? How did you kind of find that process?
I found the journey not not too bad, to be honest. And I think that helped by choosing the right course. I think that's really, really important. You know, do researching, finding out what the course is about, what modules they are, what the blend of the course is. And I think having that blend of sort of academia and practical based and going out getting work based experience. You know, I think the quality of the lecturing and the fact of the knowledge of the lecturers and experience of those, it made it a lot easier having that sort of mature student group. I think, you know, we were all quite focused. And then if there's something you weren't particularly confident with, we helped each other with it. Because obviously, like probably the academic writing and research side of it was maybe an area of weakness for me to come in. One or two of the others in the group were quite strong on that. So we helped each other. But I think there's so many support mechanisms in place at university as well, you know, to help you with how to structure assignments, how to go about researching. And then when I started doing that, I found it really, really interesting. I think if you're passionate about something and you're really interested to learn more, that you know, then there's much more motivation. I mean, what I did as well when I went back to university, I, I worked part time, but I made sure I dedicated enough time to study and learn and overcome any issues while I was on the course, which I think is another thing that's quite important, is making sure that you know you sort of have that focus for when you're doing it. And I think that really, really helped. And then moving, you know, as I was going through the course, you know, I really got into that sort of research side of it, and then applying sort of the learning to work-based learning as that came through. And I think already having a working background
Yeah.
helped with the work experience. And then that helped the transition from finishing the course. You know, I'd already been within the working environment for a long time. I knew you needed to work hard if you wanted to progress. Worked up in different organisations. You know, I was willing to appreciate that I might have to start maybe at the bottom end or a bit lower down and have to work my way up. So that transition, I feel as a mature student was probably a little bit easier coming back into the workplace.
Yeah, I think it's a really good reflection, because I mean, again, we've sort of talked about this before, but my background in some ways is similar. I you know, came back to the University of Huddersfield, or came to the University of Huddersfield for the first time as a mature student. Pretty specific focus in mind, pretty good idea of where I wanted to take that qualification, and you're right. I think it just sort of helps you kind of connect back. There's a purpose at the end of this, but also, you know, you've got that experience then of the workplace, so that when you're doing placements, internships, those sort of things, you know, you kind of almost know what to expect already versus what you might do when you may be an undergraduate student. So yeah, I think it's, you know, an important thing to reflect on. You talked also there about obviously kind of having a community, sort of having people that were either able to kind of support you as you move through the course, or that you kind of had that sort of connection with, that community with, maybe of other mature students. Are there any other sort of significant people, I guess, in your career that you'd want to give a shout out to, or people that you feel have kind of made, you know, a difference as you've made your way through that journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think you know, like your family, but you know, your close family, wider family, are really, really important, especially when you're going back as a mature student, because you're obviously coming out of a stable career and income, and then you're taking that bit of a risk to come back. But it's having their support throughout that sort of period, which may be a bit strained financially. And some of the wider family have been, you know, are quite successful in career wise, and I think that sort of gives you something like to motivate, help you to motivate to sort of say, right, you know, I want to better myself and try and sort of forge a bit of a better career. So I think that's really important. I think my current sort of line manager at the Archers has been amazing. So I've been there 10 years. We've worked together a long time. But he's just brilliant at creating a sort of supportive, you know, workplace, help all staff thrive really. think that's really, really important for me. Somebody a go-to for anything I'm not sure about, or if things are getting a bit, a bit hard, a bit tough. And I think if you've got somebody, it's higher above us really supporting you with that, I think it helps drive you forwards and makes things a little bit easier in the workplace. I think then, like, and wider people I've worked with, like wider partners. I mean, this role has just exposed me to so many different local, regional, national partners, people,
Mm.
who just can't help you enough, about sharing experiences and giving you guidance. There's just so many people out there that so much want to help you
Mm.
progress. And I think that's really important. It really helped me. I would also say, like, the children and young people are
Mm.
what, when it's a long day, it's a tough day. At the end of the day, I have a little event and there's a group of kids come say, and absolutely love that. That's brilliant. Or some children I'll see 3 or 4 years after we've done some particular work with them, and they'll still remember it, and they'll come and say, "Ah, Mr. Noble, I remember that when we did that basketball event, or
Yeah.
when we did that football event." And you think to yourself, "Do you know what? I'm really making a difference, to these children's lives and these memories, and they're still remembering them 4 or 5 years later." And then sometimes full circle, we've
Mm.
had some children what events with that are now students. I do
Mm.
a lot of work with Hallam, and I'm mentoring them and training them, and they're working for us, and that's like that circle pathway of
Mm.
really like making a difference to people's lives. And I think for me, money's important with jobs, and some of our work is well paid. Some of it is maybe not superbly paid to other people, but it's not always the most important thing. If you're getting up every day and you've got immense like job satisfaction, you're making a difference to people's lives, then I think that that's like really important to me as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like you say there, it's, your career is sort of it's a marathon, not a sprint, isn't it? You've got a lot of years potentially to kind of work in your career. And I think, like you say, that element of making a difference can be that thing where even if work is hard, it's always hard. You've got something that kind of underpins all of that. Like you say, those moments where you feel, yeah, that's real satisfaction. I know what I'm doing is having that impact. And that's brilliant, Andy. I mean, as you said, what a kind of journey that you've sort of been on already in terms of your career, and obviously more to come. You're a great advocate, obviously, for lifelong learning, which is something that obviously the university is very invested in, but also we know is kind of such an important thing for career development in general. And I guess sort of to round off the podcast, we always finish with our sort of underrated careers advice. And, you've mentioned there are lots of kind of things that you've sort of picked up throughout the course of your career so far, but is there any sort of particular kind of advice that you would give to fellow graduates or maybe kind of current students or anyone sort of associated with the university in terms of the lessons you've picked up, I guess, in your career so far?
I just touched on the job satisfaction. I think just finding something you're passionate about, that you're really invested in, that you're really passionate about. So if you're going to forge your career, because I think to me that's really important. With changing careers sort of throughout my life and thinking about my previous career, paid better, didn't not enjoy it, but I feel so much more fulfilled doing this role. So the pay is maybe a little bit less, but it's making a difference. I'm really passionate about it. I get up every day and I find like I've got that motivation. I think networking, but from two angles, obviously from building contacts, yourself out there, networking as much as possible, I think is
Mm.
really important, but also to build sort of knowledge and expertise, with wider partners, with lots of different people. And I think that's something key. If I was going to give some advice, I would say that was probably one of the biggest things that made a difference to me. And that went right back to my work placement. So this falls right back to my degree
Mm.
of applying that knowledge on the degree into a work-based situation, but doing it on the work placement and then
Mm.
starting to forge those contacts, the work placement. It then led to some paid work while I was on the course. And then after that, the job I actually applied for in Sheffield, because I'd put down of the work I did in Huddersfield, somebody from Sheffield talked to somebody in Huddersfield. And I think those things are really important. And I
Yeah.
think, some advice for students. I mean, I work with a lot of students at the moment who the proactive students who get out there and get that work-based experience and do and make those work placements word impactful for
Mm.
themselves
Mm.
are the ones that tend to be more successful. So I would say get out as early as you can in your first year. Can you get out there and do things outside of the actual study time? And you'll be amazed how much that sort of helps you as you're moving forwards. And then I suppose the old cliche of just knuckling down, if you're prepared to work hard and go the extra mile, then people will notice you. And that's me really important. I mean, I've had to go in not at the bottom of the ladder, partway up it, and then work your way up. And sometimes you're going to a new career, even with a degree, you've got to expect to do that. You can't just walk in straight at the top all the time. So I think just having that work ethic, and it gets you noticed. Definitely gets you noticed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you were talking as well about that you never know where those kind of contacts could lead. And obviously we were talking just before the podcast started that actually a kind of unintended connection that we didn't realize we had was around, the kind of the American football community in Sheffield and work going on there. So it's so interesting how those kind of connections sometimes can help you within work or kind of outside of work. So thanks, Andy. Brilliant insights, great advice, great things to share there with sort of our current graduates and students as well. Before we sort of finish off, if people have been interested in what you're talking about and potentially want to connect with you, what's the best place for people to kind of find you, whether it be LinkedIn or sort of other platforms?
Probably maybe Twitter. So I'm at AP-Noble5 for Twitter, or to drop me an email. It's anoble5@forgevalley.sheffield.sch.uk. So if anyone's wanting this, yeah, I'm more than happy to support anyone who would like any advice or any help with mentoring or anything.
That's great. Thanks, Andy. We'll pop those up when the podcast is recorded. It will be popped up on the screen so people will be able to see email and Twitter if you do want to get in touch with Andy moving forward. So that pretty much brings us to the end of the podcast. Andy, thanks so much for joining us today. Thanks for kind of becoming another member of the Hud Grad Club. And we'll hopefully see you soon, kind of maybe on campus.
Yeah, no, you're welcome.
All right, take care. All the best.
See you later. Thank you.
Enjoyed the podcast? Then go to the University of Huddersfield YouTube channel for all of our future episodes. Subscribe, like, and don't forget to hit the bell button for notifications. If you'd like to be involved in the Hud Grad Club podcast moving forward, please get in touch with us on alumni@hud.ac.uk.